Can we start? Welcome. Everyone, this virtual council meeting of this is a council meeting of the Norwich City Council. This meeting is being held under the local authorities and police and crime panels coronavirus flexibility of local authorities and police and crime panel meetings England and Wales regulations 2020, meaning that the decisions made will have the same validity as those made at a meeting held at City Hall. We have elected members of the council attending the meeting. We also have the council's monitoring officer as part of the meeting, as well as democratic service staff to record the votes. Members must be able to hear and, where practicable, see the other members. Therefore, we ask all members to keep their video on during the business of the meeting. A recording of this meeting will appear on the council's YouTube channel, and the meeting will be live streamed. If we are notified that this link is not working, we'll take a short adjournment while the issue is resolved. Can I ask participants to ensure that they are muted when not speaking, or you may be muted by an officer to maintain audio quality? The chat function is enabled for members to report technical difficulties and to indicate that they would like to speak on an item, but you will only be able to message the chair and democratic services. If you wish to speak on an item, please use the chat function and to indicate during the item. Please do not indicate via chat for future items. Voting will be done by exception. This means that I will ask for votes against, then abstentions, and the remainder of the members present will therefore be voting in favour. Although I will still ask you to raise your hand in favour. I ask that the appropriate time you raise your hand clearly in front of the screen and keep it there until we move to the next part of the vote. Please bear with us while we count the votes. So this will may take a little longer than usual for officers to check between screens to ensure all members have been seen. I received apologies from Councillors Jones, Peake and Councillor Sue Sands. There are a few Lord Mayor's announcements. I won't go through them all, just a selection. Some things have still been going on, although virtually. There was a speech for the National Association of Welfare Rights Advisors in December. I did actually do a video recording for the Norwich Cathedral Nativity. I was cast as Herod. I think I was miscast there, but never mind. And also, I didn't attend the Christmas procession at the Norwich Cathedral. I was self-isolating all throughout the Christmas period. This was attended by Councillor Caroline Ackroyd as Deputy Lord Mayor, admirable and very eloquent. Thank you, Caroline. The full list of the meetings I've been to will be on in the minutes of the meeting. I've been advised that the Director of Resources has received notice that Councillor Schmierer is withdrawing his motion, which is item 9D on the agenda, and it will be heard at a next ordinary council meeting. I would like to invite Councillor Marion Maxwell to say a few words about former Councillor Kath Ward, who sadly passed away recently. Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm sad to report to the council that former Councillor Catherine Ward sadly died last November following a short illness. She was a great friend to local government, the City Council and Norfolk County Council, of which she served the Coslaney and later Sewell wards. Kath was born in her grandparents' house in Norwich in 1946 and remained a proud Norwich person for the rest of her life. She always spoke both fondly of her childhood here and especially her time at Notre Dame School, where her interest in politics was sparked. After leaving school, she worked at Norwich Union until, after a whirlwind courtship with Arthur, she married and moved to Hingham, where she became very involved in village life. It was an incident in the local butchers where she felt someone was unjustly spoken about that she joined the Labour Party. Being in the Labour Party was her passion. She believed deeply in its values and worked tirelessly for what she thought was right. When Arthur started a new job, they decided to come back to Norwich. Being staunch Catholics, the only condition was they would live in the cathedral parish, so Parker Road in Nelson Ward became home. She threw herself into campaigning for Labour. The house was open as committee rooms and she became ward organiser for Nelson Ward. She worked endlessly in the background and she stood and won a county council seat. She was very proud to represent the people of her home city and developed a close relationship with city councillors and partnership approach with this council throughout the years she served. Many organisations benefited from her support. St Martin's Housing Trust, organisations such as St Vincent de Paul Society benefited from her support. Kath spent some of her working life as a receptionist at both the West Norwich and the N&N Hospital. She believed passionately in the NHS and was active in the union supporting her colleagues. Following her retirement, she moved to Paragon Place and became very active in the local community, including the local residents association and treasurer to the Dingles gardening group. I was personally sad to hear of her passing, as I was in phone contact daily during the lockdown. Our lives were surprisingly similar in many ways. We were born in the same year and we married on exactly the same day. I was in Manchester and she was in Norwich. She encouraged and supported a generation of people to enter local government and serve their community, including me, and was so proud and supportive when I became Lord Mayor. But most of all, she was my friend. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Marion. Could I ask councillors to make sure that the microphones are on mute, and we'll have a minute's silence. Thank you. Now we'll move to item 2, declarations of interest. Do any members have any other declarations of interest to make on any items on the agenda? Can't see anybody. Okay. Item 3, questions from the public. One public question has been received. The question is from Ms. Jo Smith. Ms. Smith, would you please ask your question? You have 3 minutes.
Yep, hang on. I'm just trying to get in. Hello. Right. Given that this council's support for any benefits associated with the building of the Western Link was predicated on the county council providing the evidence of the environmental impact and other wider improvements to Norwich, can the Cabinet Member for Sustainable and Inclusive Growth update Council on the attempts made to secure this and their success? Given this, can he now update Council again on our efforts and focus to deliver the radical city agenda regarding transport as we move forward? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stannard, would you please give your reply?
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you for your question and the opportunity to clarify this matter. I will give a very full and detailed answer. Clearly, the Western Link scheme is a very major and controversial proposal, and if built, it will have significant implications for Norfolk's carbon emissions, its environment, traffic conditions across the city, and economic activity in the north of the city. However, it should be remembered that the scheme proposed is entirely outside our administrative area and that the City Council is not a transport authority. Therefore, we are not part of the decision-making process on the Norwich Western Link, which is entirely a County Council matter. The City Council has always been consistent that any support for the scheme will be dependent on it being satisfied that certain conditions were fulfilled. This is consistent with the content of the emerging Greater Norwich Local Plan. In particular, we have demanded that the NWL needs to be set out in the context of a clear and environmentally progressive strategy for the development of transport in Norwich. This strategy needs to be the foundation for a clearly defined and comprehensive set of schemes with funding attached, which would demonstrate that, when viewed as a package, public transport, cycling and walking would be prioritised and promoted over the use of the private car. In particular, evidence of the decongestion benefits of the NWL in the city was sought, and the basis of some of these measures to promote modal shift and road space reallocation. Since the City Council expressed conditional support for the strategic outline business case, almost no progress has been made on the Transport for Norwich strategy, and the local cycling and walking infrastructure plan has not been published for consultation. The award of the £32 million for the Transforming Cities Fund project last year was welcome, but was a far smaller award than the original high value package that would have been comparable in value to the estimated £153 million cost of the NWL. We have as yet no evidence that traffic levels in the city streets will be eased in a way that would improve air quality or enable modal shift or road space reallocation as a result of the construction of the NWL. In December last year, Cabinet approved a detailed and considered response to the draft local transport plan. At the time of writing this answer, we have not received an acknowledgement or a response to that submission, which was sent on the 17th of December. Our response explained the types of principles and interventions that we would like to see implemented to improve transport in the city. The City Council's response to the local transport plan sets out our bold and radical vision for transport in Norwich. It was drafted in the context of the Council's 2040 City Vision, the COVID-19 Recovery Plan, and the Norwich City Centre Public Spaces Plan. It sets out 13 policy principles, the very first of which is to respect climate limits. It supports the county's carbon neutrality target of 2030 and proposes tough carbon reduction targets for transport, supported by an immediate and radical reduction in emissions. It demands that the local transport plan should set a carbon budget for transport in Norwich, in Norfolk and Greater Norwich, supported by strong policies to contain emissions within that budget. The second principle of our bold vision for transport is that health and well-being and fairness must be at the centre of transport policy. Access to transport directly impacts life chances, but is the poorest in society who tend to live beside busy roads or in polluted city centres, with a consequent impact on life expectancy and general health and well-being. So transport must be clean, and transport policy must promote social justice by reducing inequalities and promoting fairness. The third policy principle is that non-car access from homes to places where people work, learn, shop, and are entertained must be affordable. This will require an approach to land use and transport planning which creates compact, mixed-use clusters and directs development and calibrates density towards them. The City Council's fourth principle is to prioritise the different modes of transport on the basis of efficient energy and space use. We need to continue to induce demand for more sustainable travel behaviour by designing Norwich around the needs of pedestrians, cyclists and buses. We propose the prioritisation of different modes of transport according to a hierarchy which is based on their energy efficiency, with walking and cycling at the very top. There are a further 9 policy principles for transportation in Norwich which are freely available to peruse. They cover vital issues such as the equality impact of transport policy and design, the need to actively manage the delivery of goods, which has increased dramatically as a consequence of the rise of online shopping, the use of technology to support our goals, and the generation of revenue to invest in sustainable transport and to make us less reliant on central government grants. Our ambitious transport vision also makes radical proposals of interventions for delivery, including a workplace parking levy, a gradual reduction in the space available for fossil fuel vehicles to park, the allocation of spaces for autonomous vehicles, the reallocation of road space and time from cars to more sustainable modes, measures to free the city centre and neighbourhoods from polluting vehicles, a reduction in traffic levels in the vicinity of schools, the setting of 20 miles an hour as the default speed limit across Norwich, and the creation of mobility hubs which would facilitate smooth transfers between shared and clean modes of transport, and to ensure people can be confident that there are hubs and places in the city where they can access and smoothly switch between buses, trains, car club vehicles and hire bikes. All of these ambitious and radical policies and measures would transform the city into a safer, cleaner, more sustainable and more equitable place. This is now the City Council's main focus for influencing the County Council on transport matters. But this vision must be seen in the context of the City Council's diminished influence on the development and implementation of transport policy and projects in and around the city. This reduced role is a direct consequence of the County Council's unilateral decision to terminate the Highways Agency Agreement. Therefore, the City Council could propose ambitious and radical policies and measures, but we no longer have any role in the decision-making and implementation process. In terms of the Western Link, the termination of the Highways Agency Agreement and diminution of the City Council's role in transport matters has combined with a lack of progress on the part of the County Council in developing a new transport strategy. This slowness has served to undermine our confidence that County is serious about providing sufficient complementary measures to satisfy our conditions for supporting the Western Link project. As I say, the termination of the Highways Agency Agreement means the City Council does not have a formal role in this process, a role which would have helped ensure confidence that such complementary transport policies and schemes in the city were being planned, funded and implemented in a timely way and as agreed. However, our final position will await the outcome of work that is being undertaken to prepare for the submission of the planning application for the Norwich Western Link and the adoption of the Transport for Norwich strategy. On a decision as important as this, it is only right that we wait until we are in full possession of all the relevant information. In order for the City Council to consider supporting the proposal, we will need to see clear and convincing evidence of the Norwich Western Link being a critical part of an environmentally progressive and deliverable transport strategy for the city, delivering as follows: considerable air quality and decongestion benefits for the city, a comprehensive investment package in public transport, cycling and walking that is commensurate with the investment being considered for the Norwich Western Link, capable of delivering against carbon reduction targets in the Paris Agreement or any successor agreements. The completion of complementary schemes before the Norwich Western Link is completed. A political mechanism to ensure that the governance is in place to ensure that these commitments are implemented, and evidence that the wildlife and landscape impacts of the scheme can be satisfactorily mitigated. We are an evidence-based council which has consistently requested both the evidence and the answers to our questions before a decision of support could be considered. This evidence has not been forthcoming, and we can only surmise why. However, meanwhile, the actions of the Tory-run County Council have removed from the city any meaningful power in decision-making on city transport and highways matters through the removal of the Highways Agency Agreement. However, we have not waited idly for the County Council to respond. Instead, we have a clear alternative. We have produced a Norwich Transport Plan which is bold, radical, evidence-based and decisive. If implemented, it would give our city a better future in making practical, real-life improvements to people's day-to-day transport needs while safeguarding our precious environment. So our message is simple, but I'll repeat it again for those who've chosen not to listen. If the County Council want us to change, they'll need to answer the questions, provide the evidence, reinstate the Highways Agency or something very much like it, deliver on our bold transport plan and give us a meaningful say in transport and highways matters in the city. Until then, just as before, we cannot consider support. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Stonard. Ms Smith, you're allowed one supplementary question. Have you got a supplementary question?
No supplementary, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Thanks for attending the meeting tonight, Ms Smith. Officers will remove you from the meeting now, and you're welcome to watch the remainder of the meeting on the Council's YouTube channel. Thank you. Petitions, the next item. There have been no petitions, so none have been received for this meeting, which means we move to item 4 on the agenda, the minutes. I call upon Councillor Waters to move the minutes of the meeting held on the 24th of November 2020.
Formally moved, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. I call upon Councillor Bogerline to second the minutes.
Formally seconded, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. We'll now move to the vote. All those against? Abstentions? All those in favour? Okay, that's carried. Thank you. Item 5, questions to Cabinet members. There are 15 questions from members of the Council to Cabinet members, of which notice has been given in accordance with the provisions of Appendix 1 of the Council's Constitution. A copy will be available on the Council's website. Members who have asked questions are permitted to put a supplementary question to the Cabinet member. Question 1. Councillor Carlo, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, please, Lord Mayor. Yes, thank you, Councillor Maguire, for stating in writing that it is indeed the City Council's role to ensure that bins are not stored on pavements, especially in terraced areas where pavements are narrow. Last year, you told me that bins on pavements should be reported to the County Council or the police. I've received further complaints from residents about bins being left on pavements, including a situation where a resident had a nasty fall relating to rubbish which had dropped out of a bin stored on the street. Can I now take it that if residents or ward councillors report bins on pavements, the City Council officers will in future take action, please? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Maguire? You're on mute.
I offer my apology to Councillor Carlo for her not getting a response to her email in as fast a time as she would have liked. But I do need to comment on her reaction to this. Most people, if they'll feel they've been waiting over long, would have phoned me or emailed me saying, I'm waiting for a reply. I would have taken no offence. I would have thanked her for the prod and accelerated my response. Instead, she's taken valuable time from officers, and now particularly in her asking a supplementary question, taking further time both from officers and the members of this council. I would add that before she raised this matter in full council, she might have spoken to her fellow Green Party members. I've corresponded with one of them on this point at length in August 2019. Specifically in response to the supplementary question, I largely refer you to my previous answer, but to the very specific question, yes. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Question 2. Councillor Joseph, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, thank you, Lord Mayor. I was quite shocked to read Councillor Davis's reply. The basis of my question comes from a nationwide campaign that is being run by non-binary people to include the term MX in all forms. Would she clarify that she believes that the desire to self-identify correctly is a token gesture? And will she acknowledge that the start of tackling the roots of inequalities, I agree is the best way forward, would be best done by the reinstatement of an Equalities and Diversity Officer, which this Labour administration currently does not have?
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Youssef. Firstly, I do take objection at your question, which was not the answer that you had received from the officer. So that was disingenuous. For the last 2 years, the forms have included a free text field, and every form going forward will include that, so people can identify in any way they wish, choose their own title. And currently, I think we all know of the resource, unfortunately, to employ additional officers.
Thank you. Councillor Davies. Question 3. Councillor Price, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I do, Lord Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Stonard, for that answer to Lucy Galvin's question. I'm delighted that the Cabinet is finally following the example of Green councillors and not supporting this road. There has never been any environmental justification for any section of the Northern Bypass, and it is a shame that Labour administration signed off on its construction in the first place. Greens know that new roads create air pollution and more traffic generally, causing more problems than they solve for people in the future. Will Councillor Stonard follow the example of Greens and oppose all new road proposals, which are very likely to be harmful to the health of Norwich residents? For example, any proposed road in the east of Norwich considered as part of the extensive Norwich East development?
Thank you. Councillor Stonard.
Well, Councillor Price, that's a supplementary question on a completely different subject. But you will have heard now for the second time my equally detailed answer on the original question to former Councillor Smith in this very meeting just a few moments ago. Lord Mayor, we have many important matters to discuss tonight, and I do not intend to waste more of Council's valuable time by repeating myself yet again. And it's a shame Councillor Price doesn't feel the same way. However, on his prior reference to Norwich Labour Party policy, as reported in the local press following an all-members meeting earlier this month, I would perhaps remind him of the general advice I give to all those who ask questions on how best to change Labour Party policy. And that is to join the party, get involved and work to make the changes you wish to see happen. I'm not sure whether you've ever thought of that, Ben. So I helpfully remind you once again, Lord Mayor, for the avoidance of doubt.
Thank you, Councillor Stonard. Question 4. Councillor Osborne, do you have a supplementary question?
I do, Lord Mayor. Thank you. None of what Councillor Maguire says in his response is actually any news to me. Because what this answer does not state, and maybe Councillor Maguire is not aware of this, is that every single one of those actions that the council, that are detailed in the response that the council has done in response to antisocial behaviour is actually being organised and instigated by myself. So I'm personally responsible for arranging all of those visits to the estates mentioned and obtaining all of the response from officers. And you know, I'm perfectly happy to try and help, as I'm sure all councillors here are, but it should not be down to individual councillors to do the council's job. So if I can just return to the specific example of Ebenezer Place, which raises an example of the sort of wider symptomatic issue. A resident there has been repeatedly reporting antisocial behaviour throughout the last year. Nobody from the antisocial behaviour team responded to those reports until earlier this month. That's a waste of at least 7 months. And even then, the response was only provided after I followed up. And that's, as I say, not an isolated case. So I return to my original question, Councillor Maguire. Do you acknowledge that the council is failing to meet its own standards in responding to antisocial behaviour?
Thank you. Councillor Maguire.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I understand that Councillor Osborne is keen to progress his political agenda. This is a legitimate activity for any opposition councillor. In doing so, however, it is imperative that his points are built on fact. Further, accusing officers of not responding to complaints from residents when the evidence shows that they actually have and have been working to deliver solutions is plainly wrong, and something which I cannot let pass without comment. I would advise Councillor Osborne to follow one of the first rules in politics, and that is check your facts. Ground all your work in truth, or anything that you hope to build will collapse. I'm also surprised with your supplementary in the detail, in that having said nobody, there are the words, and if I go back to them, no officer visited or responded, and yet now you say that you arranged these visits. So you must get your, or Lord Mayor, Councillor Osborne must get his facts sorted out. And I think it is something of, an, shall we call it an overclaim, that he said he is responsible for every visit that has been made, because he said he wasn't with me or officers when I have visited, or when Councillor Harris and officers have visited. He's not been there on other officers. The only apology I have to make is that in 2 cases, officers responded 2 days later than the performance target. That's the only thing that hasn't been done by officers. And I'd be grateful for Councillor Osborne to, in future, stick to facts. Thank you.
Thank you. Question 5. Councillor Neil, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, Lord Mayor. Firstly, I'd like to thank the Cabinet member for her detailed reply, and would be happy to jointly support the Council to push government for funding changes to meet demand. The question I ask is, does she know why the last Labour government, having been in power for 12 plus years, did not reverse the right to buy and take the opportunity to put in place adequate funding arrangements to meet social housing demand?
Councillor Harris.
Well, that's an interesting question, isn't it, Councillor Neil? No, I don't know why they didn't. I would have pushed for right to buy reform, as you well know, and I've made that very clear in any council meetings that I've been in. So I can't comment on why they didn't, but what I can comment on is the fact that we are trying to lobby very heavily at the moment to try and get some reforms, and it will be reform that we will hopefully get in the future.
Thank you. Councillor Graham, do you have a supplementary question?
No, Lord Mayor, I don't.
Thank you. Councillor Schmierer, question 7. Do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I do. Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. And thank you very much, Councillor Kendrick, for your detailed response to my question about local government finance. I am reassured that Norwich City Council will not be drawing down on reserves this financial year or next, as you stated in your response. However, I would like to raise my concerns about the future financial viability of local government, especially in the light of large number of shop closures, which I'm sure we all are aware of. In 2020, shops such as Carphone Warehouse closed all 531 of its standalone branches, and fashion chains including Oasis, Warehouse, Laura Ashley and Kath Kidson also closed down. With the news that Debenhams and Topshop are unlikely or will not be reopening their retail stores, what will the impact of the loss of these shops be on Norwich's national non-domestic rate, please?
Thank you. Councillor Kendrick.
Yes, well, we'll be discussing obviously the question of local government finance in a motion which will be addressed later in this meeting. Obviously, we are monitoring the situation with regards to the, say, decline in the number of retail offices one finds in the high street. Say, in many ways, Norwich has suffered less badly than some other areas. So it will be a continuing facet that we will monitor and report upon.
Thank you.
Can I just raise a procedural issue? You asked Councillor Graham whether she has had a supplementary question, and for some reason Councillor Ryan answered on her behalf, but I believe Councillor Graham does have a supplementary question.
Yes, I've just got that notice. Yes. Don't quite know what happened.
Thank you, I do. I was unmuting and then Councillor Ryan answered in my place while I was finding the
I just heard my name, that was all.
Sorry about that. I wondered if I'd misheard and then had to look at the order, but may I ask my supplementary question now?
Yes, you may, yes.
Thank you. So, thank you for your answer. We're agreed that national and international actions are needed, but Norwich is the planning authority for the airport. The City Council encouraged and adopted a master plan that would triple aviation emissions. That completely dwarfs any savings that we might make by cycling to the airport. As the master plan itself notes, there is little to be gained in one airport being limited in the number of flights if the outcome is that local. As you said, Norwich can't be the only airport diversifying away from aviation. Bristol has recently turned down a planning application for airport expansion because of the danger to our climate. So if we receive a planning application to increase aviation emissions, will the council refrain from getting politically involved, as it did with, say, Anglia Square? And will it respect the evidence and take heed of the science and the principle of limiting carbon that you cited earlier, and the climate impact of tripling aviation?
Thank you. We'll go back to Councillor to question 6. Councillor Stannard.
Yeah, thank you, Leslie. The first thing about the airport master plan is that we didn't approve it. We weren't being asked to approve it. And certainly in terms of airport expansion, we would receive, as you've just alluded to, we would receive a planning application. We haven't received any planning application yet. And certainly in terms of how that would be handled, I would say it's not just a matter of not getting politically involved as we didn't with Anglia Square. It's about not getting politically involved as we never do. We never get politically involved because the planning committee, as you know, because I sat on it with you in the past, Leslie, as you know, planning committee makes all decisions based on the evidence and based on the policies. And they make those decisions in the meeting without any prejudgment or any interference from the administration, and I can assure you that situation will continue.
Thank you. So leap back to question 8 for that aberration. It's question 8. Councillor Bergelein, do you have a supplementary question?
Thank you, Councillor Kendrick. I would just like to remind Councillor Kendrick that the 2011 referendum, and that was before my time in the UK, but I understand that was not a referendum on PR but on AV, and I think confusing the two, as a lot of members of this council often do, is really not helpful when we talk about the issue. Now, I don't pretend to understand the internal workings of the Labour Party, but I am aware that your Norwich South Labour MP supports PR. So my question is, does that mean that Labour members of this council are not free to vote for and support PR if they would want to?
Thank you very much for that question. First of all, could I question what you said about the 2011 referendum? Both the Green Party and the Liberal Democrats, indeed all proponents of proportional representation, actually argued for a yes vote. Many of them claiming that it would be the first step upon a move towards proportional representation. That first step, the British people, by about a majority of 2 to 1, decided not to undertake. Now, as to the Labour Party, I think it is fair to say that there is a healthy discussion within the Labour Party. There are views on both sides. It's not, I think, like most people, it's not an issue that sort of gets me up in the morning. I mean, I'm more concerned about obviously things like health service, education, and other vital services. But there is a healthy debate, and I very much welcome that within the Labour Party.
Thank you. Question 9. Councillor McCartney-Gray, do you have a supplementary question?
No, thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Question 10. Councillor Erin Fulton-McAllister, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, thank you, Lord Mayor. I've turned my video off because my internet connection is unstable, so I'll turn it on for a moment if that's okay, but if it glitches, I'll switch it off again. Is that okay?
Yep, thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, it's not quite. There we go. So yes, thank you for the answer that I received. My supplementary question is, given the recent leak from the Business Secretary's office that there are wide-ranging employment changes as a result of leaving the EU, could the leader of the council write to Chloe Smith to ask if she's in support of the government proposals to increase the 48-hour working week, /sick pay, maternity leave, holiday pay, and wider employment rights?
Thank you. Councillor Waters.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Fulton-McAllister, for picking up yet another consequence of our departure from the European Union. I must say I'm disturbed by the fact that the responsibility for this review of terms and conditions of employment is in the hands of Kwasi Kwarteng, because he is one of 4 new MPs as they were in 2010. The others were Elizabeth Truss, Dominic Raab and Priti Patel, who pushed out a publication called Britannia Unchained. And in that series of essays, some standout remarks are the UK rewards laziness, and too many people in Britain prefer a lie-in to hard work. So now they're in the cabinet, and now they are driving the ideological agenda post-Brexit of the Conservative Party. and I would be very disturbed about the consequences of that. I mean, if they were serious, I think, about enhancing protections, which is what they've been saying, they would really be looking at improving the rights of people at work, particularly in the gig economy, people who are self-employed, and a general raft of employment improvements, which of course we've seen as being highly vulnerable, particularly in this period of COVID. So I will write to Chloe Smith MP. I think I may well include those quotations and perhaps ask her to resile from them, and to give a confirmation that Brexit is supposed to mean a land of milk and honey, perhaps, and that she will be strongly supporting the kinds of improvements that I've suggested she should make. I will send the letter and I will report back to Council when I receive a reply.
Thank you, Councillor Waters.
Thank you. Question 11. Councillor Button, do you have a supplementary question?
Supplementary, thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Question 12. Councillor Driver, do you have a supplementary question?
No supplement, Lord Mayor, thank you.
Thank you. Question 13. Councillor Giles, do you have a supplementary question?
No, just to thank Democratic Services for all the work they're doing in trying to make the elections the government have told us we've got to have in May as safe as possible in the extraordinary circumstances we're in.
Thank you. Question 14. Councillor Stuteley, do you have a supplementary question?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I do, and thank you, Councillor Stonard. It's good to see what Charge Collective could potentially offer residents in central Norwich who don't have parking provision but wish to be a part of the EV revolution. But can you confirm what assistance is available to people who do have parking and also wish to invest in electric vehicles? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stonard.
Thank you, Councillor Stuteley, and to everybody, apologies for the snoring dog in the background. I hope it won't put you off. The government is bringing forward the ban on the sale of new petrol and diesel fueled cars to 2030, 5 years earlier than previously planned. While the ban has been brought forward again, hybrid cars that can operate for substantial different distances on pure electric power will get a stay of execution until 2035. Although what constitutes substantial is yet to be defined. The new rules will also apply to vans, although there is as yet no detail about which types of hybrid vans will be exempt. However, you don't have to wait until then, and there are still plenty of reasons to switch to an electric vehicle in 2021. In particular, as you've alluded to, Councillor Stuteley, you own your own driveway. Electric cars have a reputation for being more expensive than their traditional counterparts. But improvements in technology mean the gap is closing every day. And what's more, maturing tech has other benefits. So modern EVs will now go further between charges than ever before and at much less cost. Put the two together and there's now a selection of affordable electric cars that provide all the benefits of an EV and enough range to keep life simple. In addition to the EV connected to your property, could even be used to store unused energy from the grid on selected innovative energy tariffs. The grid to vehicle to grid technology could charge your car using unwanted spare energy, and then you can use the energy the following day to cook your dinner, heat your home, or drive for free. The electrification of transport will bring about a welcome step change on low carbon innovation, which we've only just started to realise and commercialise the benefits. Also, you can still take advantage of a discount on the price of brand new low emission vehicles through a grant the government gives to vehicle dealerships and manufacturers. You do not need to do anything if you want to buy one of these vehicles. The dealer will include the value of the grant in the vehicle's price. On top of this grant, you can also get a grant for homes or businesses via the Electric Vehicle Home Charge Scheme or the Workplace Charge Point Grant. This is a 75% discount on the total installation costs. Finally, you can also get a free fuse upgrade from the UK Power Network if, for example, you purchased an electric vehicle or installed an air source heat pump to your home. You might need to upgrade your existing made electrical fuse to a larger size to help cope with the additional load. However, I hope that provides you with all the information that you need, Councillor Stutley.
Thank you. We have a question 15. Councillor Price, do you have a supplementary question to your second question?
No, thank you, Lord Mayor.
Sorry, what was it? I didn't quite catch that. Yes or no?
No, thank you, Lord Mayor.
Okay, thank you.
No.
Okay. Right, we'll move to item 6, Treasury Management Mid-Year Review Report 2020 to 2021. I call upon Councillor Kendrick to move item 6.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. First of all, I'd like to read the following statement. There has been an omission on Appendix 1 of the report. The table in Appendix 1 should have had the following notes at the base. Asterisk, specialist advice will be obtained before the use of VNAV money market funds. Double asterisk, local authorities will review in line with SEPA suggested indicators. Now to deal with the report itself. This report details the results of the Council's Treasury management activities for the first 6 months of the financial year 2021. Table 1 shows the Council held 57.6 million of cash and short-term investments as of September the 30th, 2020. All investment transactions taken were within the approved limits laid out by the annual investment strategy. Table 2 shows the actual borrowing as of September the 30th, 2020, totaled 219.9 million. The Council has not borrowed to date this year, and no additional borrowing is forecast for the remainder of the financial year. As part of the spending review announcement, the Government has confirmed that it will reform the Public Works Loan Board lending terms, ending the use of such funds for investment properties brought primarily for yield. Alongside the spending review, the Government has published revised lending terms for the Public Works Loan Board and guidance to support local authorities to determine if a proposed project is an appropriate use of funds, of loans. In response to the revised lending terms, the Government has cut the Public Works Loan Board lending rate to guilds plus 100 basis points for the standard rate, and guilds plus 80 basis points for those authorities able to make use of the certainty rate. Table 4 shows the forecast capital expenditure in this financial year of 43.7 million. Of this, 36.4 million is planned to be financially immediately through the application of capital or revenue resources, e.g. capital receipts, capital grants. The remaining 7.3 million will increase the Council's overall borrowing need. Table 5 shows the consequential impact of the capital programme on the Council's capital financing requirement. Forecast closing capital financing requirement for this financial year is 329 million, which is the cumulative total of the 2021 unfinanced capital expenditure in prior years. Unfinanced capital expenditure. This is lower than the original estimates due to the halt in the planned commercial properties acquisitions. Table 6 shows that the Council has maintained an under-borrowed position. This means that the capital borrowing need has not been fully funded with loan debt, as cash supporting the Council's reserves, balances and cash flow has been used as a temporary measure. Prudential indicators in relation to the capital finance requirement, the authorised limit and the operational borrowing boundaries have been complied with in this financial year. As part of the report, Council is asked to approve an increase in the approved county party limit with an individual market fund from 5 to 10 million, but remaining within the existing 25 million maximum this type of financial instrument. This is to provide additional flexibility in holding short-term cash. Therefore, I very much urge this Council to approve this report. Thank you.
Thank you. I call upon Councillor Stutley to second the item.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and with thanks to Councillor Kendrick and officers for the report, I formally second and reserve the right to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to invite group spokespersons now. Councillor Price.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. This report sets out the first 6 months of Treasury management performance for this financial cycle up to the September the 30th. And I had hoped that we would discuss this at the November Council. I thank officers for their hard work in producing the report while working under extreme difficulties caused by the pandemic. Table 2 of the report demonstrates a massive reduction in borrowing by this council from central government through the PWLB by approximately £73 million from the figure approved by council last February. This reduction is due to the HM Treasury's consultation and subsequent rulings on borrowing exclusively for yield. Borrowing for yield is something that I have warned this council against for a number of years. It was always clear to me that the loans provided by central government were never for this purpose. The situation the council now finds itself in, due to the administration's commercial investment policy and the haste in which Cabinet made these buying decisions, is that we are now saddled long-term to our current commercial investment portfolio. Investments such as hotels, gyms, and cold stores that we are now unable to replace by using central government loans if sold in the future. The Greens have consistently advocated that commercial investment should also bring social, ethical, and environmental benefits, and that the commercial investment policy should not exclusively focus on security, yield, and liquidity. It will be interesting to see how the council create a vision to improve or repurpose the existing portfolio while continuing to generate a revenue stream from them and also meeting local and national zero carbon targets as we move forward. I'm sure Councillor Kendrick will enlighten us. I urge that we consult someone with a specialised expertise in ethical investments to help achieve these changes and to also shape future investment and Treasury management policy that will benefit residents of Norwich moving forward. The report asks Council to improve an increase in the counterparty limit with an individual money market fund from 5 to 10 million. A money market fund is a low risk investment that gives you a place to hold rather than grow your savings while still earning a small amount of interest and retaining its liquidity. Even though a money market fund is a low risk investment, it's still an investment and could go down in value, although this is very rare. So MMFs are a prudent mechanism for this council to utilise. Section 11 of this report makes clear that this change will help cash management while the council is holding significant amounts of central government money in relation to business grants and other COVID-related payments. I am surprised that we would seem to be holding large amounts of government grants, enough to warrant this change to policy, when I would have assumed that this money would have been flowing through the council far quicker, reaching the people who need it much faster. I also query whether or not central government would stake a claim to any interest earned by the council on these investments. Again, I'm sure the Cabinet member will provide a reasonable explanation in his reply. I conclude that this report demonstrates that the council has performed its duties in reporting the Treasury management performance for the first 6 months of the financial year. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'd like to thank the team for this report and for the ongoing Treasury management work during these challenging times. There are a few points in the report that I would like to highlight. Firstly, the significant role that local authorities have had in supporting business through the pandemic. Paragraph 9 of the report highlights the impact on cash balances as further business grants administered by the council are dispersed during the second half of the year. Paragraph 10 indicates that councils are now facing charges for deposit of cash due to low market rates. Paragraph 16 of the report highlights the Bank of England Monetary Policy Committee's report from November, such as the impact of the pandemic on the UK economy, that sadly the 4.5% unemployment rate referenced in that report now stands at 5%. This figure will only increase as levels of government support are reduced, and ultimately this will impact on the overall income generated by the council. We are being asked as part of this item to approve an increase in the approved counterparty limit with an individual money market fund. A money market fund is a low risk investment that gives the council somewhere to store cash while still receiving a small return. Appendix A suggests that the council is using a mix of CNAV, LVNAV and VNAV, but there are no details of the preferred split between these when sums are being invested. It's also not immediately clear from the report what types of assets are held in the funds that we use. Finally, I would like to thank Hannah Simpson for answering my question this afternoon as to the significance of the asterisk next to VNAV on page 45, and to Councillor Kendrick for explaining that it denotes that specialist advice will be obtained for the use of a variable net asset value money market fund. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other councillors who wish to indicate? I can't see any. No? Okay. Councillor Kendrick, would you like to respond?
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. Well, I completely refute the suggestions made by Councillor Price that our commercial property portfolio has somehow been detrimental. In fact, far from the opposite to that. Given that this particular financial year, I think we would all accept, apart from wartime, has been the most challenging and difficult peacetime financial year. It really is remarkable that despite all the problems that commercial properties are facing, we've actually collected 85% of the rents that were owed to us. 85%. And that is quite a remarkable situation. And that actually, as I say, given that I think it's almost unique. I mean, nearly all commercial portfolio owners but suffered quite severe hits. So I think that 85% collection rate really does show what a strong investment we've actually made over the last few years. And in fact, just to say, in this financial year, and it hasn't, of course, completely finished yet, but so far we actually raised from our new acquisitions £4.4 million. Now, I'm almost resigned to the fact that I shall go to my grave not being told by the Green Party what cuts we would have to make in our frontline services if we had listened, and indeed to listen now, to their endless suggestions that we should not invest in commercial properties. It is precisely those commercial properties that we invested in that it's helping protect our frontline services, of which the people of this city, especially those disadvantaged and the poorest, so deeply rely upon.
Thank you. Right, we'll now move to vote. Oh, sorry. Oh, Councillor Stookley. Yeah. Do you wish to speak? No. Okay, thank you. Now we'll move to the vote. All those against? No. Abstentions? And all those in favour?
Lord Mayor,
do I know what you're going to say now?
Consider it said.
Okay, telepathy. Okay. Okay. We're there? Yes. That's carried. Thank you. Okay, we'll move to item 7, appointment of interim monitoring officer. And officers will now take a moment for Mr. Jeff Wild to be removed from the meeting during this item. It's okay, right? Okay, I call upon Councillor Kendrick to move item 7.
Well, being brief, obviously, given the time, I'd just like to wish Mr. Wild the best of luck for being a new monitoring officer. I'm sure he'll do the next job, and I'm sure we will all look forward to working with him in the coming years.
Thank you. I call upon Councillor Waters to second the item.
Formally seconded, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. And I'd like to invite group spokespersons. Councillor Bergerlein.
Yeah, I'll keep it very brief as well. We're all aware of the important role of the monitoring officer and what a prestigious and really important position it is for the local council. I think the appointment will be a very positive one. The interactions I so far had with him were were very professional, very clear advice, and also, proactive advice has been coming our way as well. So I'm very pleased to see that. He's also will be, in his time as the interim monitoring officer, be looking at our constitution as a whole, which is a bit piecemealed and not very well matched together in parts. So I think that will be very positive as well. He won't be with us for very long for the obvious reason of the restructure, but he can't hear it now, but he'll be very pleased that I will do my best not to create a scandal and create him extra work.
Thank you very much. Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Keep it brief. We're very happy to support the appointment of Jeff Wild as the interim monitoring officer and look forward to working with him. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other councillors who wish to indicate, want to speak? No? Okay. Councillor Kendrick, would you like to respond?
No, thank you.
No, thank you. Still a response. We'll now move to the vote. All those against? Abstentions? All those in favour? Oh. Yep. Thank you, that's carried. Can we now ask Jeff Wild to be brought back into the meeting? Thank you. Item 8, Members' Allowances Scheme. I call upon Councillor Kendrick to move item 8.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. Well, again, I will be very brief in this item, given the time as it is. This is the report from the independent, and I stress independent panel that deals with members' allowances, which meet every 4 years. I think they come up with a series of proposals, and I would urge the council to approve them.
Thank you. Councillor Waters, to second the item.
Yes, thank you very much, Lord Mayor. Just to add that I was on the council in the 1990s when we decided to introduce an independent panel, and that has served us very well. And the recommendations that the panel always makes is done without fear or favour, and is a judge of the evidence before it, and a recognition of the work that councillors do in carrying out their duties on behalf of the citizens of the city. So I commend the recommendations of this report before us.
Thank you. And I'd like to invite the group spokespersons. Councillor Osborne.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I will also keep it very brief, and as has been highlighted, this is an independent review, which I think is a very valuable thing for this council to have, and so I will also be supporting this, the conclusions of this independent review.
Thank you. Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'd like to thank the independent panel for their time in undertaking their review and preparing this report. From my own perspective, when I gave evidence to the panel, I found their questioning broad in range and insightful, and we fully support the conclusions reached. Some of the suggestions raised in paragraph 26 of the report could warrant further consideration at the time of the next review, and it should be noted that in paragraph 32 it states that none of the political groups on this council were asking for an increase in allowances. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other councillors who indicate they wish to speak on this? No, can't see any. Okay. Councillor Kendrick, would you like to respond?
Yes, thank you.
That's still a response. Okay. We'll now move to the vote. All those against? Abstentions? Oh, Councillor Ackroyd, we can't see your video. Yeah, you can verbally confirm it towards the end, Councillor Ackroyd.
Broadband issues, Lord Mayor.
Okay, right. All those in favour? Okay. Councillor Ackroyd, you'd like to say yay or nay?
Lord Mayor, I believe her connection has dropped.
Oh. We can move on with that then, I think, can we? It's carried. Yeah, we'll just try to get Councillor Ackroyd back. Yeah. Oh, you're back, Councillor Ackroyd. Welcome. You want to unmute? Very good.
Yes, sorry about that.
Okay.
Yes,
You're
I'm
voting,
voting in favour if I'm not too late.
in favour. Okay,
Yes,
better late than
indeed.
never. Okay, thank you.
Sorry about that.
That's carried then. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we move to item 9A, local government funding. I call upon Councillor Kendrick to move item 9A.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. I speak as the resources portfolio holder of Norwich City Council, which has seen its core spending reduced by £7.3 million, or 9% cash terms, since 2010, in terms of government's revenue support grant. Indeed, we have been one of the worst hit councils in the country. This government's claim that the core spending of local government is to be increased by 2.2 billion ignores the fact that 85% of that increase comes from increased council tax bills. Prime Minister and Chancellor are hitting working families hard by ensuring that councils have to increase their council taxes by 5% in order to legally balance their budgets. This tax bombshell of £2 billion will hit working families hard at a time when they have suffered as a result of the COVID crisis, especially those ordinary families who are self-employed and seen their incomes cut. That is why Keir Starmer, the Labour leader, has called that instead of this council tax hike, the council should directly pay the money to local government. If I am to be asked how that is to be paid, I suggest that the Chancellor increases the highest rate of taxation back to 50%. Better off of getting £7,000 in savings due to lockdown and not being able to go on foreign holidays or have expensive meals. They can afford it. However, it's important to state that this motion does not just deal with this council, but the larger local government sector as a whole. Now, if I was to detail all the cuts in services that are to be made, then this would probably take at least an hour. And as I say, mercifully, I am limited to just 10 minutes. So I shall limit my examples to just a few councils I've gathered in my research. Throughout this pandemic, warnings have been clear about the threat to local councils and their ability to provide services. A BBC analysis in the last year showed that 9 out of the 10 major local authorities in England do not have enough cash to cover their spending plans for this year. And the coronavirus pandemic has led to even higher expenditure. And it's likely that they will go over £1.7 billion over budget. A committee of MPs has recently criticised the Treasury for its worryingly laissez-faire attitude towards the state of local government, warning of significant financial risk that local town hall debts would drag down the whole of local government. Every council has spent the past decade working with less money in government grants. In the past year, they have dealt with additional COVID costs too. Let's give a few examples. Labour-run Nottingham is far from alone in saying that they have not had the full costs reimbursed from Whitehall, which is something that the Minister promised back in March that would be done. So now the council will be putting up bills, council tax bills, by 5% as well as cutting costs, which means the axing of 272 jobs, reducing services and charging more for things that they provide. Other councils are also being hard hit. Manchester Airport was built by the City Council, which still owns a large chunk of it since. In the past 20 years, the Manchester Airport Group has significantly expanded, buying Stansted and East Midlands Airport. and also creating an airport city, one of the government's low tax enterprise zones. While it has been in the past a fruitful investment to Manchester City Council, paying out large dividends to its shareholders, which include the surrounding councils as well, that has been completely removed by the COVID crisis, grounding planes and seeing the numbers dramatically cut. That leaves Manchester City Council, who holds the largest stake. They are going to have to find nearly £60 billion in additional cuts to actually meet the shortfall. Under normal circumstances, to give another authority, that is Bath and North East Somerset, which is Liberal Democrat controlled, they have a portfolio of over 1,000 properties. In the past, this has been very fruitful, but this pandemic has been like a punch in the gut for those councils, which rely heavily on income from rent and other services to balance the budget. They have had to undertake a wholesale review of finances, given the millions of pounds they have lost in rental payments from commercial properties. While its other normal banker income from tourism has also estimated over the last financial year. So residents too can expect a 5% tax increase from April, which still isn't enough to cover an £11.6 million shortfall for the next year. So they would have to dip into the reserves and hope for better days to come. Labour-run Luton Borough Council had to agree an emergency budget in July, thanks to the fact that the funds from their airport was also been very badly hit. And they had to make 365 jobs were made redundant, along with cuts to key services. And still there will have to be increases to residents in terms of garden waste collection. Another council, the Labour-run Wirral Council, is facing a £40 million budget debt. Again, this is partly a result of the pandemic, but also the long-term underfunding of local government. Even after borrowing £25 million, it's still going to have to find another £16 million in cuts to balance the books. So how is this council planning to find the money? Well, they're going to have to close things like the Williamson Art Gallery and Museum. And that's not the only services that are being put. They're also looking at axing school crossing patrols, closing swimming pools and golf courses. But they have no alternative to do so. What we are saying is it wrong for council to be put in a position that they are forced to hit families with a council tax rise in the middle of a pandemic, and that is wrong. The government promised to do what was necessary to support councils during this pandemic, and the Prime Minister has broken that promise. After the worst recession of any major economy, with the virus still not under control, families up and down the country are already worried about paying their bills. Now local leaders are forced to raise council tax to protect local services, just when so many families are struggling to make ends meet. Our proposals would be see government properly fund local councils in this country, and that would not just be for Norwich, but right across the local government sector as a whole. I would very much urge this council to approve this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Waters, to second the item.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I do second the item. I will speak later, but I'll reserve that right for now.
Thank you. I'd like to invite the group spokespersons. Councillor Schmerer.
Yes, thank you very much, Lord Mayor. And thank you very much to Councillor Kendrick and to Councillor Waters for bringing this motion to us. Next month, like every year, we'll be agreeing our council's budget. And like every year over the last 5 years that I've sat on this council, we'll sadly be weighing up which areas are going to see reductions in funding owing to cuts handed down from central government, all in the name of austerity. When the cuts began a decade or so ago, the government stated that it, and I quote here, expects local authorities will be able to make savings from efficiency measures, eliminating waste and, where necessary, reducing spending in areas that are lower priority for their communities. That is what they said in 2010. A decade on, and these are certainly no longer just efficiencies. The services that we are seeing cuts to include libraries, children's centres, parks, open spaces, bus services, social services, and of course I could go on. These cuts have moved on from just efficiencies and have turned into social vandalism, and its hammer continues to fall hardest on the poorest. To offset these cuts, rather than providing much needed funds for cash-strapped local authorities, the government has simply allowed councils to raise council taxes, which is at best a very regressive form of taxation that benefits large landowners and millionaires. I, for one, would welcome it if a fairer form of local taxation, such as the land value tax, were to be introduced, but that is another topic for another day. Back to the motion in hand. National government has long looked disparagingly on local authorities, seeing them as something of an anathema, and looked covetously on their large reserves as the justification for slashing spending or ignoring their plight. However, as we have seen in recent months and years, these reserves are required for rainy days, and in the current situation, a pandemic laid upon a decade of austerity, we are not so much experiencing a rainy day as a cyclone. And I expect that within the next year or two, more councils will simply be going bankrupt unless something is done about it by our national government. These bankruptcies aren't because of a political attempt to showboat and stand up to national government, like in Liverpool during the 1980s. No, this is simply councils running out of money to provide the services they need to provide, stretched as they are, in particular, by rising social care bills. If we are to protect our communities and indeed rebuild our society as we emerge from the devastation caused by the pandemic, then properly funded local authorities will be absolutely central to this. I welcome what this motion notes and what it demands from central government, and will of course be supporting it. Sadly, however, I fear that these requests will simply fall on deaf ears of a government that seems incapable of understanding federalism, regionalism, let alone localism, or the needs of local authorities such as Norwich. Thank you very much, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Kendrick, for bringing this motion. The motion rightly highlights the issue of short-term emergency funding being no substitute against the need to provide a sustainable revenue source for local government. Excuse me. This council, like others across the country, has been at the front line of delivering the response to COVID-19. But unlike some of the companies who have sprung up to deliver government services, has not received the same level of government largesse. As a council, we are left to rely on the awful regressive council tax, as the government continues to shift the burden to local authorities in order to maintain a manifesto commitment to not raise taxes, instead being able to blame local councils and councillors. This council is one of the few to maintain, with cross-party support over the years, a council tax reduction scheme aimed at protecting those with limited means. As we have heard today, the economic shock following the pandemic will almost certainly see a rise in those Norwich citizens who come to rely on such support. The government goes hot and cold about its fixation with local government reorganisation, and I do wonder if the desire for super councils may shed some light on the way funding is distributed at the moment. It's far easier to get public buy-in for wholesale reorganisation when councils are on their knees due to lack of funding. If we believed in fairy tales, I would fully expect the Chancellor to use the next budget to properly fund local government using the £350 million per week now that we have left the EU. I mean, it was on the side of the bus, so it must be true. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. I'd now like to call on other councillors indicating who'd like to speak. Councillor Sands, Mike Sands.
Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Councillor Waters. Yeah.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm pleased to speak in favour of this motion and wish to echo the words of both the mover and seconder, and some of the other comments have been made just in the last few minutes. It would be easy to think of this as just yet another motion about the facts and figures of local government finance, just a jumble of dry numbers about how much money a council has lost. Instead, I propose we look at this from the perspective of a person in my ward, Bowthorpe, in terms of the valued services that they have lost and the way this has changed our precious community. 16 years ago, I had the pleasure of joining Charles Clarke MP and others in opening the brand new Sure Start Children's Centre in Clover Hill. Happy families, children buzzing around everywhere, and a multitude of staff from different services, all under one roof. Their mission was very simple: give local kids and their parents the best chance in life. The work that the centre did in the following years transformed lives. It gave many parents experiencing pressures and difficulties hope and extended security and opportunity. It changed the outcomes of children's lives. I meet young adults throughout my ward that benefited from Sure Start, and it set them up on the path to a good education and to opportunity. In other cases, it just meant that they stayed with their parents and didn't go into the care system. How do you put a price on a life change like that? I would say that you cannot and should not even try. Just another example, just around the corner in Chapel Break, we had a local police a safer neighbourhood team led by an outstanding officer who I met a number of times, rooted in the community, knowledgeable, well respected and well liked. The team worked from a modern police station, which meant easy access across the villages which make up Bowthorpe. Their responsiveness, the relationships they built and the intelligence which was fed back helped tackle serious crime and antisocial behaviour effectively and gave people peace of mind. Again, Lord Mayor, what price do you wish to place on peace of mind and freedom from fear? Fast forward to the present, and Bowthorpe is a different community, still wonderful, with great people, but lacking those two services which I briefly described. Our Sure Start Centre is closed. Our police station was closed and sold off, and the police team that worked there cut, and the residual dispersed, working out of the Earlham Road Police Centre and other centres around Norfolk. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Waters.
Well, it's nearly 8 o'clock in the evening, and 900 staff from the consultancy Deloitte are probably making their way home on commuter trains. And between them, they will have received just over £900,000 today for working on the test and trace, the £22 billion, largely private-led programme, which was commissioned without a procurement for the private sector to deliver services during a centenary of a terrible pandemic, the last one being in 1919. So that's every day, every working day, and maybe overtime at weekends. And it's just a reminder to us that, first of all, the pre-COVID austerity, given the amount of money that has been spent to tackle COVID, was a minuscule amount of money and didn't in any way justify the fanciful ideas that unless you cut severely the services that the public rely on and the institutions that provide it, the economy would collapse. That was a lie, that was a nonsense, and the expenditure to tackle the COVID pandemic demonstrates that fact, but it also demonstrates the ideological orientation of this government and its commitment to a private sector state and diminished public state. So this motion, and I'm delighted that we've got a consensus around it, frames the debate we're going to be having about our own budget in February. What it describes in the recommendations are the immediate and sensible things a government could do to simply stabilise the funding situation facing local authorities and the resources that are going to be needed to support communities that have been under tremendous stress over the past year, and this is continuing into 2021. And it is also a reminder that we need to recognise that it's the public that are at the receiving end of this ideological approach. The local government finance system, I think, has been alluded to, and it's bust. It needs to be rebuilt, it needs to be redesigned. But it's really important that we, alongside other local government partners, other local authorities, communities, have a say in how that is designed so we can get back to rebuilding local institutions, local public bodies. That's the next big fight for us once COVID is done. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Any other councillors wish to contribute? No. Councillor Stannard, that's not your hand up to speak, no? Okay. Councillor Kendrick, would you like to respond?
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. Well, I'd like to very much thank other members for their support and encouragement in this motion. It is very important that we in local government stand up for the sector as a whole, not just our own council. And I think we have done so tonight. So I urge all members to support this motion.
Thank you. We'll now move to the vote. All those against? No. No. Abstentions? No. All those in favour? Councillor Packer? Okay, that's carried. Thank you. Right, we move to motion 9B, maintaining the tree stock in Norwich. An amendment to motion 9B has been received from Councillor Packer, which has been circulated. Councillor Neil has indicated that he is willing to accept this amendment. If no other member objects, the amendment will become part of the substantive motion. Ask officers to put the first set of amendments on the screen for a short period of time to ensure members are clear on this. The amendments are in bold text. Can I ask you to remain muted while this is on the screen, as no debate should take place, as members won't be seen. Okay. Since no member has indicated, objected, that's agreed. I think that's the case, yes. Another amendment to item 9B has been received from Councillor Packer, which has been circulated. Councillor Neil has indicated that he is not willing to accept this amendment. I will therefore, it will be therefore dealt with in the usual manner after the substantive motion has been moved and seconded. I'll ask the officers to put this amendment on the screen for a short period of time to ensure members are clear on this. Can I ask you to remain muted while this is on the screen, as no debate should take place, as members won't be seen. Again, the amendments are in bold text. Okay. Okay, I call upon Councillor Neil to move motion 9B as amended.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm sure with our attention focused on the climate emergency, we're all realising the importance of trees. I'm aware of a number of recent campaigns and petitions trying to save and protect them, and you may sometimes think you've heard enough about them. But do we all know the importance of the mature tree stock we are famous for in our fine city? Trees convert carbon dioxide into oxygen, which we can breathe. They also store carbon dioxide, which combats climate change. The canopies of trees trap dust, absorb pollutants from the air. Some trees have medicinal properties, and being surrounded by them even lowers our blood pressure. They reduce wind speeds, cool the air, and help prevent flooding and soil erosion. Trees also provide homes for birds, insects, and other wildlife. For those looking to see the price of their houses continue to increase, trees even add value there. Trees fill a number of roles in a city, and we can see that our city is and will be better with them than without them. So, to the specific points of this motion, I'm sure we all agree that trees are good and that we like having them in the city. But do we realise how important it is to have mature trees rather than young saplings? I was aware that young trees took up a lot of carbon as they grew, and that is good, but I hadn't reckoned on the amount of carbon that is sequestered in mature trees that would be released if these older trees were cut down. In addition, I think wildlife living on mature trees, plus the mass and shade it provides, along with improvements in air quality and being a prominent feature in an area. With this in mind, I realised that it's vital to retain the older trees we have in and around Norwich. Cutting down mature trees, possibly centuries old, then replacing them with saplings does not provide an equal replacement. The new trees do not provide homes and food for so much wildlife. They don't have such beneficial impacts on air quality or noise reduction. And if they are not cared for very carefully, they won't even survive their infancy. I'm sure we're all aware of the trees planted along the NDR, or as some people call it, Broadland Northway, to replace the 6,000 or so said to have been cut down in order for the road to be built. Due to poor practice and a hot summer, up to 2/3 of the new trees were said to have been lost. Then, of course, there was the time that this council in 2001, not sure who was in administration then, wanted to cut down large mature horse chestnut trees along a picturesque road because children might be injured or people slip on the conkers. So we need to protect our mature trees and appreciate their value in every sense. It needs to become unacceptable for healthy mature trees to be felled as part of a planning application. New buildings need to be built around existing trees, or not at all. If in very exceptional circumstances a tree is removed to allow building, planting equal to the tree that is lost needs to occur straight away. It is not good enough to replace mature tree with saplings, or occasionally ones a few years older, that might provide similar amounts of biodiversity and other benefits only in future decades. I hope all councillors will agree that the value of trees far outweighs their commercial value, and that is no longer appropriate to cut them down in order to allow a new building. Following on from that, I hope you will vote for this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bergelein, to second the item.
Formally seconded, and I reserve my right to speak.
Thank you. I call upon Councillor Packer to move the amendment.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. The amendments put forward were done so on the basis that would make the motion actually deliverable, as opposed to something that we talk about tonight and then isn't able to be implemented. So really there are three key issues reflected in the amendments that we put forward that weren't accepted. So first, they make the motion fit for purpose. So without impacting on our ability to meet our statutory and legal duty of tree management, particularly the emergency functions we must always prioritise and the public expect us to. Second, they reflect the challenges that we face in terms of national planning policy and the changes that will be taking place and pushed through by this Tory government. These are very much a reality. However much we wish otherwise, we have to legally follow national guidelines, which are yet to be completed. And third, they make the motion viable for our officers to actually be able to achieve. We must take into account the continued pressures on our resources and the capacity for others to carry out our legal responsibilities. And also, Lord Mayor, it should not be forgotten the considerable strain that our officers are working under due to COVID-19. So if we as councillors are going to increase the workload of officers, we must make sure that it is in a responsible and achievable manner. So although I accept, I'm very supportive of opposition councillors accepting our initial amendments. I can't vote in favour of a motion which I feel has not been fully thought out, could make unrealistic requirements, and could have a negative impact on officers' health and well-being by making unrealistic demands in what is an already challenging situation. It worries me significantly that Councillor Neil has chosen to ignore the realities of the impact of COVID-19, the existence of statutory functions, which we must honour firstly, and the ever-reducing budgets we face, and the associated capacity due to the very motion which Councillor Kendrick has just introduced and we have discussed and voted on. So to wrap up, Lord Mayor, it's very positive that the initial amendments were accepted, but it's disappointing that the second amendments weren't. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Maguire to second the amendment.
Formally second, Lord Mayor, but I reserve the right to speak.
Thank you. Any other councillors who wish to indicate they want to speak on this? Sorry, Councillor Lubbock.
Yes, thank you, Lord Mayor. As Liberal Democrats, we also want the motion to be deliverable. We want to meet our statutory duties, and we do need it to be in line with national planning policy. So we are supportive of this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other councillors? In case I've missed any. Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I just wanted to remind people that although Councillor Neil was concentrating quite a lot on trees being cut down, last year this council did plant 100 additional trees to celebrate 100 years of council housing. So that is a really positive measure that we took, improving the quality of our environment and investing in the future.
Thank you. Councillor Price.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I was disappointed to read this amendment because it waters down this motion so far. Green councillors do not simply want the council to continue in its present attitude to trees, but to improve, to have a vision which fits the aspirations of Norwich's residents today. It is unwise to suggest that a supplementary planning document to protect trees should be written after national planning policy changes currently being discussed are completed, as we do not know when these changes will be finalised. Years of following an improved policy could be lost for no good reason if this amendment is passed. The points in the amendment suggesting that saving and protecting mature trees should only be prioritised if resources and budgets allow show that the Cabinet does not intend to make the protection of trees and wildlife a priority. If they did, they would find the resource to prioritise the creation of a supplementary planning document, which, to be honest, should not require that much officer time. If the Labour councillors disagree with Green councillors and think that protecting trees should not be a council priority, they should say so and vote against this motion instead of filling it with caveats and excuses. Green councillors have a strong vision of a healthy city, and this vision does not appear to be shared by the Labour group. We see Labour councillors seek old-fashioned growth, Anglia Square type developments and incomes from car parks. Meanwhile, 500 or so people signed a petition to save and protect trees in a development site on King Street, showing that many residents want the city to be enhanced by nature for better air quality, more modern forms of transport, and something better than the status quo. These Labour amendments show that Labour thinking is part of an old traditional system of growth and development, which ultimately makes Norwich a less attractive city to invest in. Greens have a holistic vision which prioritises health and well-being, supported by an appropriate, ambitious economy which builds on the appeal of Norwich, a city which has been well known for its trees and closeness to the countryside for centuries. We can do better for our residents and for the natural world. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bergline.
Yeah, I just quickly wanted to respond to Councillor Packer on something. So first of all, we have accepted the amendments on the emergency function. So I do realise that if there is an emergency, you know, delay is not appropriate. And I think that that was a very good amendment. You know, amendments like that are very welcome. As Councillor Price has already said, we don't know how far in the future the changes to the planning system are. So I think there would have been a good solution that you had in one of your amendments, which is just to say, if it is in line with planning policy, that would have been absolutely appropriate. And it would have meant that we could do it now if there's long delays, or we could do it in line with the changed policies as well. So that would have been perfectly fine, but you've chosen not to do that. And then thirdly, I mean, I'm sorry, but if you just listen to this, continue to strongly represent the need to preserve trees and the wildlife living on them where appropriate. I'm sorry, but can you give me an example where that would not be appropriate? That just negates the whole idea of the motion. And it just makes me angry to have these cop-outs left, right and centre when we're doing our best to try and draft a motion that is, you know, that is supposed to protect trees and is supposed to strengthen our local policies.
Thank you. Any other councillors wish to speak on this item? Okay. Councillor Maguire. Are we there?
Lord Mayor, we're speaking on the amendments.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I think, you know, Councillor Packer has summarised it very well. I think at the end of the day, and if they look at our political record, this Labour administration has protected the environment, continues to protect the environment. If you look at our programme of advances, if you look at our environmental strategies as they have been renewed, if you just simply look at our record, the Labour Party is the party of the environment. However, the Labour Party sensibly and as required by the Rio Summit considers that environmental aspect along with the social and the economic. We take this holistic approach and the achievements are solid, reliable, and can be built upon. We don't have a magic wand, so we don't say aspirational things that cannot be achieved. Rather, we do things in practice and reality. I therefore support the amendment, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Are we there? Does anyone else want to speak on this item? Okay. Councillor Packer, would you like to respond?
Lord Mayor, when motions are put forward to council, they must be clear and thought out, including the actions which are being requested. The original motion as it stood without these amendments did not meet the criteria in my mind. The motion, if passed with these amendments, becomes a positive, specific and achievable one, which will help forward the agenda, which I know we all share. Just to clarify, I'm not annoyed, Lord Mayor, that our amendments to the original motion weren't accepted, particularly by councillors Neil, Price and Bergelein in particular. I'm just more disappointed that they've not chosen to accept them, because I feel there's an opportunity here for us to work through consensus. And I hoped they would have wanted to as well.
Thank you. We'll now move to the vote on the amendment. All those in favour? Okay. Those against? Okay. And abstentions? That's the amendment's carried. Thank you. I'd like to invite group spokespersons. Councillor Packer.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. We are incredibly fortunate to have so many trees, green and open spaces in our city. It is one of the many reasons that I, like many, want my children to grow up here. Now more than ever, it is vital to protect our environment, and trees play a key part in improving air quality and having positive health benefits for our residents. These long and arduous months since last March, which have felt so difficult and oppressive for us all, have sometimes been lightened through the opportunity to safely enjoy and experience the open space around us, in which our city trees and the wildlife they support have played a pivotal role. Positive comments and feedback from residents and visitors for our city parks and open spaces have been a joy to receive. They reflect the hard work and success of this council and the staff which helped to deliver it. Norwich has a long, proud and extensive history of protecting our extensive tree coverage. The development of the city parks in the 1920s and 30s, preservation and enhancement of pockets of woodland, the promotion and careful management of the iconic Mousehold Heath, and so many of the green and open spaces should be a record that we are all proud of. Much of this was achieved while the Labour councils built thousands of council homes and new services, but took effort to balance this with also ensuring plentiful green space was provided through gardens, verges and open space. This has and continues to be a priority of this Labour administration. Over the past 12 months, we've carried out safety inspections of 13,362 individual trees, but 20 tree preservation orders covering 80 trees in place. We've been 100% successful fighting appeals against TPOs. As this motion acknowledges, the protection of the city's trees must also be considered within the changing local and national context. With the harmful Tory dissolution of NHAC, the County Council took on full responsibility for the management of trees on our highways. Amending planning documentation will be dependent upon factors outside of our control, such as national planning policy changes. This council has previously voiced its concerns and fears over this. However, this will not stop us from preserving the city's trees by doing what we can through the services we provide, despite the appalling financial situation we face, planning requirements that we can influence, and through the ability to influence external agencies. We will continue to protect the city's trees and more widely continue to invest in our green and open spaces to benefit our residents through improving air quality as well as their health and well-being. The motion in its amended form helps to again highlight and underline this ongoing commitment, the services used to deliver it, and the long-term strategy which has been a feature of this City Council in different ways for nearly a century. I urge all members to support this motion.
Thank you. Councillor Lubbock.
Yes, thank you, Lord Mayor. I think we would all agree the importance that trees play in our everyday lives, but more so at this particular time when it's so vital that we get out and feel the benefits of trees. I've felt the benefits of them in Eaton Park and also at the Eaton golf course, where we've had the opportunity to walk that golf course while it's been shut to players, and that has really lifted my spirits and the many that have walked there. So we know that they are important to our everyday lives. We know from what Councillor Neal and Councillor Packer have said about the improving of the air quality by absorbing carbon dioxide and releasing oxygen. We know that they bring people closer to nature. We know that they provide habitats for wildlife, and we know that they provide essential shade on summer days. Oh, that they were now. And that they do so much more. So that's why we need to preserve those trees that we have and plant more when they die or are lost to development. So the production of a supplementary planning document to clarify and strengthen council policy would be timely. This motion is also an opportunity for me to ask for clarification of the county's responsibility since May 2020 for street trees and how that is discharged. Some recent casework found that the county officers had taken more than 3 months to inspect trees, get quotes for the work, and even now we're waiting for the work to be done. These were trees beside a footpath, not next to a road, so initially some confusion about whether it was the city or county who were responsible for them. Could I ask that we be given guidance on who is responsible for which trees and the process the county undertake for managing theirs? With regard to the city council and the trees in our parks and open spaces and the council land, I'm hopeful that with the new in-house contract with Norwich City Services Limited, we will have an opportunity to do things differently, to do things more efficiently, to do things we could not do before. And I quote from a recent council press release, which said that the new contract would enable more direct control on how the services are delivered and support our ambitious environmental strategy. I am hopeful that this means more care of the trees we currently have and ways and means of providing replacement trees where necessary. With regard to ways and means of providing replacement trees, could I ask whether there could be a partnership with a charity promoting tree planting that could help us harness the enthusiasm there is from the public to plant more trees and to do their bit to help the environment? We do already have a very good reputation, as we've heard, for the number of trees in Norwich. Could we not improve on that and become Norwich, the city of trees? And I'll leave that thought with you, but we wholeheartedly support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other councillors who wish to indicate they want to speak on this subject? Okay, we'll go back to Councillor Bergerline.
Councillor Neil, I think, is summing up. I mean, I'm happy to, but he's proposed it.
You
So.
reserved your right to speak.
Yeah, still formally seconding. I think Councillor Neil will be summing up.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Back to you, Councillor Neil.
Yeah. Well, thank you, everybody. It sounds like some support for this. I am very disappointed that Councillor Packer brought in this amendment. I do disagree with him on those amendments. As usual, the Labour administration continues to, I'll repeat that because that's their favourite phrase, continues to water down what was a strong motion. They've introduced their get out of jail cards unnecessarily, and more importantly, their amendments are unquantifiable, just to avoid full commitment. The core of our motion is to prevent mature trees being destroyed, and planting 100 saplings is positive, but not equal to that of cutting down mature trees. So obviously I will be voting for this motion, but with a bitter taste in my mouth, because this is just the same old liking to dilute any good ideas that we put forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, we'll move to the vote. And just a reminder, officers will put the final substantive motion on the screen. So we'll move to a vote momentarily. Okay, we'll now move to the vote. All those against? Abstentions? All those in favour? Okay, that's carried. Thank you very much. We love our trees. We're just still within time. Motion 9C, repair. Amendments to motion 9C have been received from Councillor Maguire and Councillor Wright, which have been circulated. Councillor Graham has indicated that she is willing to accept the amendments. Therefore, if no other member objects, these will become part of the substantive motion. I'll ask officers to put the amendments on the screen for a short period of time to ensure that members are clear on this. The amendments are in bold text. Can I ask you to remain muted while this is on the screen, as no debate should take place while members can't be seen. Okay, as no member has objected, it's agreed. I call upon Councillor Graham to move motion 9C.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. This motion was prompted by Norwich getting 2 new recycling centres, and with it the opportunity to move us a step closer to living in a circular and fairer economy that reuses materials. Currently, the new sites will sell stuff that arrives in saleable condition, and they'll recycle stuff that's been sorted out for recycling, and everything else will get landfilled. Another aim is to give people access to things currently unaffordable and to reduce our embodied carbon footprint. That is, the carbon produced in getting the raw materials and making the thing and transporting it. I recognise that there are limits to what cash-strapped councils can do to reduce the amount of items being thrown away, but I'm calling for us to do what we can to support a city-based repair service, providing low-cost repairs and teaching repair skills. There will be reuse shops at the new tips, and those are pretty good for items which are already in good enough condition to sell. But in any case, a lot of these would already be taken to a charity shop. However, there are lots of items that are potentially resaleable, but not quite there yet. Things that need a minor repair still get put into landfill. Residents who see something they can use in the landfill section are unable to remove it. There are obstacles to overcome, but we can stop dumping usable resources into landfill, and we can create a source of valuable materials for repair and reuse shops. If we just make that little bit of extra effort with the things that arrive almost ready and needing a little bit of tender love and care. Of course, if stuff is reused, it's not wasted. So moving stuff up the waste hierarchy is a key to reducing residual waste, the rubbish that really has to be landfilled. And we should be aiming to reduce that as close to zero as we can. If everyone was already familiar with the waste hierarchy, we'd be reducing what we use, we'd be reusing it, repairing it, recovering the reusable parts and materials before we ever think of throwing things away, because there's no such place as away, and there's no unlimited pool of resources. All these stages should be as routine as putting out your papers for the recycling. I'm old enough to remember when recycling was only done by scouts and guides. And more recently, when I was told that we were going to recycle food waste, I didn't think it sounded plausible, but it has happened, and other things can happen too. I went to the tip and I found, destined for landfill, a lamp that needed a new bulb, a bike that needed a puncture repair job, a sofa that needed a patch, some kitchen equipment that appeared to need nothing more than someone to use it, some electrical equipment that needed dismantling so that the precious metals in it could be reused. Many residents have told me similar stories, but I'm only going to repeat one of them. This resident said, "When we moved house, I took some items for which we could find no possible use to the dump. There I saw 3 unused, still wrapped rolls of wire fencing. I went to pick them up to take them to a charity shop, but a worker told me I must leave them as they were now the property of Norwich City Council. When I protested that this was a terrible waste of perfectly good material, He told me that it happened all the time and gave us an example, the dumping of a nearly new three-piece leather three-piece suite, which the owner had simply changed his mind about. So when I took a second load and saw the car queuing in front of me had a boot full of new and almost new toys, I asked the driver if I could take it. He was very happy for me to take the toys to a charity shop, and the charity shop was very pleased with the donation. I can understand the council not allowing people to take things away at their own risk, because we live in a risk-averse and litigious age. And obviously these things would need checking and perhaps a little bit of TLC before being taken away. But this could provide jobs and even profit. I'm sure that councillors equally understand the frustration of residents who see things that have been thrown away that they could use if there wasn't somebody there stopping them. There are obstacles to overcome, as we know, but these aren't reasons for not doing it. I've asked if our curbside collection might include repairable stuff. And of course, there's currently no money for this. So we would need to work with partners like the Good Economy Commission, the City College, LEP, to help us to get funding, to develop the business case for funding and so on. But it would be a huge missed opportunity if we didn't equip our new centres with the facilities to reuse materials in an age of austerity and climate chaos. We're calling for repairs facilities on site, but if it turns out to be more practical to do the separating on site and the repair work somewhere else, then let's do it that way. After all, we want more business in the city centre. Norwich does have a small repair industry. You can get your car, bike, computer, phone, clothes mended, and that's great. These are small-scale local industries employing local people, providing a vital service for people and planet. Something we've done really well in terms of sharing and reducing our waste and use of stuff are barrel bikes and Lumi. They make resources available to people while reducing both cost and waste, and not to mention getting people onto a bike and into a community. We can build on that and go much further. We don't want continuation of the status quo. We want to build on and improve it by finding ways of reusing and recycling other things, and of course, to maintain and raise standards so that manufacturers make them to last longer. I have a few more suggestions for how we might help the repair industry along. We can work with the third sector to create a small grants programme for innovative repair projects and business ideas. We could make more use of Lumi and support a business-to-business platform matching supply and demand for surplus materials. We could hold a festival of repair where people can bring and swap items and learn skills. This might be an extension of One Planet Norwich or a separate event in a post-lockdown world. Or we could learn from Hackney Fixers and the like. Hackney Fixers have a fixed party online this coming Saturday, geared to making more laptops available for kids who need them. Edinburgh Remakery provides another excellent example, as do the 151 restart groups. Lots of us may have had the experience of trying to mend something and finding you can't replace the battery or some other part, and it's designed to be thrown away and replaced. Built-in obsolescence used to be considered good for business, and I'm sure it still is in climate-denying quarters. But if we want to move away from an economic model that turns resources into rubbish without limit, we need to focus on an economy based on valuing the materials available to us and the people who need them. Politically, we need to support and improve EU repairability standards so that conscientious manufacturers who make things to last and be repaired don't lose out to those making short-life products that they hope people will just keep buying and dumping. Of course, UK companies trading with the EU will have to meet those standards anyway. Who would have thought? I've had any number of reservations about Brexit, but I never guessed that it would make my UK washing machine break down quicker. Who would have thought that by 2020, our food waste would be recycled for energy and fertiliser, but it is. And I congratulate the council on this, and also the Norfolk Recycles team for the wealth of networking info it provides and for people who already want to do the right thing. The right thing of reusing everything needs to be the easy thing, the new normal, and best practice needs to become routine practice for everyone. So who now thinks that sorting almost all of our waste into its component parts cannot be done? Clearly it can, and we're doing some of it. And let's do more of it before stuff becomes waste. Let's make today's best practice the new normal. I hope you'll accept this motion as another step along the way. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Osborne, to second the item.
I formally second and reserve the right to speak, also being aware that we are over the 2-hour limit.
Thank you.
Chair, can I suggest we move to a vote on this? No one's against it. The amendments have been seconded. There's no reason for us to have any more discussion on it, bearing in mind the time.
Well, yeah, there's still got to be, the spokesperson's got to still speak. So it depends on how much they want to say. So I think they should have the right to say it, but I understand if you somewhere else to go, Councillor Stannard. But
no, I just sort of thinking that we're behaving as if it's opposed and it's not.
No, we could do that on a lot of occasions, couldn't we? Really, but we're here. I'd just like to invite group spokespersons. Councillor Maguire, if you'd like to say something or anything.
Yes, just to thank Councillor Graham for accepting the simple but necessary amendments to her motion. I'm happy to support and to vote for both resolutions as amended.
Champion, thank you. Councillor Ackroyd. Oh, have we got a connection problem here again? Councillor Ackroyd. We're still not getting through?
No, I'm here. Oh. Thank you, Lord Mayor. Sorry, problems unmuting. I'm not doing well tonight. Yes, thank you very much. I have a sort of huge speech prepared, but given, well, no, I do really. But given the time, just to say that we are really happy to support this motion, and that you know, it mentions actually having a repair facility on site. We suggest also that other options are available, such as partnering with charities such as Emmaus, which already do work on mending furniture, thus providing jobs and training for people. Another option would be to partner with educational establishments such as Norwich City College, University Technical College, and so on and so forth. Just one thing I want to say, I hope the motion can bear fruit with Norfolk County Council. We certainly need a greater emphasis on repair instead of any of the other options, and I would ask them to give that a mention on their website. They ask us to reduce, reuse and recycle, so please can they add in repair as a reminder to people that that's what they can do, you know, even if they can't provide something at the recycling centre. We're very happy to support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ackroyd. Any other councillors wish to indicate? You all want to speak for 3 minutes each? No, we're okay with that. Councillor Graham, would you like to respond in your 3 minutes?
I won't take 3 minutes, but I would like to thank everybody for your support. I'm not calling for us to continue the status quo and to continue taking baby steps up the waste hierarchy. I'm calling for us to take huge and necessary leaps to move our economy from an extractivist one to a circular one. And thank you for your support.
Thank you very much, Councillor Graham. We'll now move to the vote. All those against? Okay. Abstentions? In favour? Yeah. Okay, I think that's carried. Thank you. And of course, as mentioned previously, motion on advertising, motion 9D. Previously, this has been deferred to the next ordinary council meeting. So that's the end of the meeting. Thank you for your attendance and thank you. Good night and stay